9 to 10 p.m. Monday night on Liffey Sounds. The world you don't know. The world you don't know. 9 to 10 p.m. Monday night on Liffey Sounds.
Now, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're very welcome along to this Monday's edition of The World You Don't Know. It's Monday, the 16th of November 2015. That's allegedly the date. That means the world is 2015 years old as of today. Anyway, the contact number for the studio is 087 062 7138. I've got a very good guest lined up. I've got a great gentleman from London, or from the UK, should I say, coming on, a guy called Chris Spivey. Now, Chris is a blogger. He blogs about a lot of things. A lot of stuff that I like to talk about on my show. And I'm going to play a clip for you now. Now, it's not Chris, it's actually an Irish journalist talking to RT News about what went on in Paris the other night. And this is going to set the air for the rest of the show. We're going to be talking about false flag operations and a lot of other stuff besides as well, I hope. I'm going to have Chris on for nearly enough an hour, anyway, about 50 minutes, hopefully, 45, 50 minutes. Bar a couple of minutes of adverts throughout the show, just twice. But I'm going to play this clip now. I want you to have a listen to this clip. This is a political journalist called Gary Coleman. Gary Coleman, I suppose is his name in English. He's talking to RT, Russia Today News, about who ultimately behind the shit that's going on in this world today. So I'll just have a listen to this clip and I'll be back to you in 2 minutes. While this clip is playing, I'm not going to play it all. I'm going to play a few minutes just to give you a flavour. While that's playing, I'm going to get Chris on via Skype. I know he's waiting in the wings for me, so I'm going to dial him up while this video is playing. So have a listen to this and I'll get back to you in a couple of minutes.
Well, let's now talk to political journalist and author Gerard O'Coleman, who joins us from Paris this evening. Thanks very much for joining us again on RT International. You're in the French capital. What's the mood and atmosphere in the city right now?
We're being told that there's a state of war and a state of emergency. We've had this before. We had this in January, and for several weeks we had non-stop sirens and non-stop chatter on the radio about the threat from radical Islam and terrorist groups and so on. And so we're having a kind of a replay of that, but it has been, I think, accentuated, and we're going to have an intensification of the media campaign, which is essentially a propaganda campaign to make people in France fear Muslims. We need to be clear about the origin of the war on terror. The war on terror is, I quote, orchestrated from abroad. These are the words François Hollande used to describe this terrorist attack. Well, the attacks that have been continuing to destroy Syria, to massacre its population, have also been orchestrated from abroad. They were orchestrated by NATO, and they've been carrying these attacks out against the civilian population of Syria for 4 years now. And this is a terrorist campaign that is also orchestrated from abroad. And people in Europe need to understand that there is a war that is becoming global, that is being waged against civilian populations in particular. It is a form of neo-imperialism and neo-colonialism which aims to divide and conquer European and Middle Eastern and African and the world's population, for that matter, and to make them submit to a global order that does not serve the interests of most of the people on this planet, but that does serve the interests of a very few ruling elite, a very small, tiny, and particularly tyrannical ruling elite. There is no war on terror. There is a war that is being waged using proxy groups, terrorist proxy groups, and they are being used against nation states who are resisting US and Israeli hegemony, and they are also being used as a means of disciplining the workforces in Europe. In a period of mass unemployment and austerity, you now have terrorist attacks being committed by terrorists funded, armed and trained by Western intelligence agencies. There is no such thing as ISIS. ISIS is a creation of the United States. We know that from official sources of the US military themselves. Declassified documents from the Defense Intelligence Agency have confirmed that. And the French government is now attempting to drum up support for more military intervention in Syria. And what they want to do is they want to get in on the game. The game is almost lost. The Russians have routed much of the Islamic State. You now have Islamic State militants coming into Europe disguised.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, that's just a small taste of that journalist talking to RT. His name is Garrod O'Coleman. Now, if you go onto my page on Facebook, The World You Don't Know, you'll find that video there, but it is doing the rounds. If you just type in Garrod O'Coleman, RT News, you'll find that clip. It's pretty much all over Facebook. Now, I've got Chris waiting in the ring, so I'm going to go straight to Chris. Hopefully he was able to listen to that. Good evening, Chris.
Hello, Mike. You all right?
I'm fine. Listen, thanks very much for coming on to the World You Don't Know show.
My pleasure, mate.
Now, I was talking to you the other day via Facebook through messaging, and there are a couple of things that we can't talk about, so I'm obviously not going to mention those. I don't want to be getting you into any trouble across the water. But suffice to say, I've been following your blog for the last couple of years, and I find it extremely interesting, some of the stuff you write about. You write some absolutely fantastic articles. Now, I have my own theories on why you're being persecuted over in the UK. I don't think it's anything to do with what we can't mention. I think there's other things that you've been blogging about that is probably giving them more reason to come after you and try and shut you up. Now, but one of the things you do blog about quite a lot is false flags.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Now, and we've just seen what happened in Paris, and there's a lot of talk online that what's gone on in Paris on Friday night was a false flag event.
Well, it was a variety of false flags, wasn't it, Mike? How much of it is true is debatable, but I wasn't going to actually touch it because I'm still working on the Russian plane false flag at the moment, but I saw so many of these French flags appearing on Facebook.
That's everywhere, I know.
Yeah, by people who are supposedly clued up to what's really going on. And I think we're doomed. We're doomed, Mike, you know, when people are believing it. I've started like a little bit, you know, putting a bit together, but it's hard to keep up with it because it changes by the hour, you know.
Yeah.
And this is what they do in false flags. Of course, they one paper will give you one version, and another paper will give you another version, and they keep changing until the waters are that muddied. You can come at it from so many different angles that no one knows what's going on, you know. But just by looking at the photos of it, as I've been doing this article, I've been putting this article together and researching it as I go along. I keep having to go back on myself to correct things, you know. But just by the pictures alone, you can tell it's a false flag when you've got pregnant women hanging off window ledges, you know.
I've seen that, yeah.
Stretch, and then women pulling them up by the one arm, whereby the camera then stops filming that to, you know, just film the street. Well, you wouldn't do that for a start. Not that a pregnant woman could hang from a ledge for very long by her fingertips.
Now, one thing...
Or a woman has the strength to pull her up.
Yeah, it was a bit unusual, all right.
But you wouldn't stop filming that. You keep filming that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you would. I know I would anyway. One thing that I noticed a lot about this, compared to the Boston bombings. The Boston bombings was on a street, and it was out in the open in the middle of the day, and there was a lot of people there who had cell phones, and they were taking, you know, their own videos. So there was a lot of stuff that on that day ended up on social media. So you were able to get a lot of different video footage compared to what the mainstream media were pushing out and what the mainstream media were telling you to look at. This, however, this attack in Paris the other night, over 100 people killed in a nightclub at a pop concert, in a theatre, in a big venue. And not one video has emerged from anybody's mobile phone of these attacks, not one. I find that very strange.
There is a video on the Daily Mail of the group playing, just as the supposed...
I've seen that video, yeah, I've seen that.
You know, but you can't see nothing like that. Must be the worst light show in the history of concerts. Now, this group, Eagles of Death Metal, what a stupid name, supposedly been going since 1998, but there's only 2 members.
Never heard of them.
And one of these members doesn't play live. So what you basically have is a group full of session musicians, you know, but they're meant to be the business, which they certainly weren't from what little bit you can hear on the Daily Mail video. And then, as I say, they were just playing chords, like you can't see anything, you know, the light is really, really bad. And the next thing you hear, like a typing pool, you know, of typewriters rather than Kalashnikov machine guns, and you can hear them quite clearly over this, you know, this loud rock music. But straight away, the guitarist and the drummer dive, and whoever's filming it doesn't react at all to these typewriters going off, you know.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy. I say, if that's meant to be well, at least a semi-professional rock set, then you know, we're really in trouble. But yeah, that's all that emerged. But it doesn't make sense, Mike, because we're told that we've got 2 stories. One, that there was 3 gunmen, and another that there was 3 gunmen and a woman. Probably turned out to be Samantha Luthway. And they run into this rock venue unopposed, you know, so knew where to go, start firing, and then all of a sudden they stop firing and start taking hostages. Well, you know, what was that all about? You know, why not take hostages from the start? Why start? I mean, how long would it take to sort of well, the venue was meant to, first of all, it held 1,000 people, then it went up to 1,500 people, but a lot of them was upstairs. So how many was downstairs in the, you know, in the standing area, which was the ones which were getting shot up? But how long would it take to mow them down with automatic machine guns, you know?
Yeah, it's all very strange. And like yourself, Chris, I'm not casting any opinions about what happened on Friday night. I'm not saying it's a false flag. I don't know. I wasn't in Paris. But it stinks. It stinks to high bloody heaven. What's coming out in the mainstream media stinks to high heaven. And one of the things that there's been a lot of talk about, I mean, a lot of talk show hosts across the UK have been talking about it the last couple of days, is this passport, these magic passports that seem to be bloody indestructible.
Well, yeah, that all started at 9/11, didn't it? But it's carried on with the Russian plane. They're finding passports all intact in these, you know, the Russian plane that was shot down. But I say I'm writing this article on this Paris malarkey at the moment, and there's 3 different versions of this this one passport. First, it came from the fella. The second one to blow himself up. Oh no, the first one to blow himself up.
That's the guy they found
the football stadium.
They found a bit of his finger or something like that.
That was in the Bataclan or whatever right. the club's called. Then that changed to they found it in the Bataclan, this passport for the same fella, and then there's another version where they've taken it off a car that was stopped at the Belgian border after the terrorist attack had taken place, you know, with these fleeing terrorists. So you've got 3 different versions of this one passport. Plus, then another one was identified by his finger at this this Bataclan club. Do you know, totally ludicrous, you know. So you got 3 people blowing themselves up at least in this club. Yet, from what I can see, I mean, there's a picture of the standing area, which has got a lot of smeared blood around it, but it certainly doesn't look like 3 bombs have gone off in there.
Now,
you know?
I don't know if you've heard of she's an online blogger, a lady I've interviewed here once before, Kerry Cassidy from Project Camelot. I'm not sure if you're aware of that woman.
I'm not now.
She does whistleblower videos. She basically interviews whistleblowers. But she put a blog out there today, and she was stating that, and I don't know if this is true, I haven't checked it out and I haven't had time to, but she was stating that Wembley, you know the way all these large monuments around the world, capital cities, they did it here in Dublin, turning iconic buildings into the colours of the French flag, along with everybody's Facebook
that
profile.
was done very quickly, Mike, wasn't it?
It was done very, very fast. But what she says was that Wembley Arena was lit up in those colours an hour before those attacks began.
Yeah, well, on this article I've done, I've got a Google search that someone sent me, and they sent me about 5 to 6 on Saturday, and it was reporting on this Paris attack 2 days before that, according to this Google search.
And Wikipedia were
and
reporting
that's not
a
the
couple of
first
hours before
time.
it as well.
I've seen Google be premature, and as you know, the BBC was premature on
With 9/11,
9/11.
Building 7, yeah.
But yeah, that's in the article. Someone sent me that, and it certainly looks the real McCoy to me. So you know, if you work back, it happened on Friday the 13th. So if someone does a search at 5 to 6 on a Saturday night or Saturday evening, how can it be 2 days old? You know, from 2 days ago, it can't. But it's there in black and white, so to speak. You know,
it is in black and white. I mean, there's a lot of screenshots doing the rounds on social media today of Wikipedia pages and stuff like that were reporting the attacks in Paris hours before they even happened. So, I mean, why is Wikipedia doing that? Why was Wembley Stadium lit up in the colours of France an hour before those attacks took place? It's all a bit strange if you ask me. You know,
it is, yeah. And where did they get all them silver blankets from? And that's what I want to know. And why? I thought that was for marathon runners, not all you see is photos of people wandering around with silver foil blankets on them on their mobile phones, you know. So they haven't got hypothermia, they haven't run a marathon, and they're not in shock. But that seemed to be the order of the day. And there's quite a few anomalies in the photos. You know, you got sort of like policemen crouched in front of a car, as if they're in a shootout. So where's that leave the photographer? You know, in the wide open, so things like that.
Yeah, it is, and they're things that I don't like using the term sheeple, but I mean, if you just look at bloody Facebook, I mean, they come out in their droves over the weekend to change their colours to the French colours. But even though the day before 145 people were killed in Lebanon, I think, by an ISIS bomb, and there wasn't a bloody word about that anywhere. But
no, but that doesn't further the agenda, Mike, does it?
Well, that's the thing.
What the agenda is. I mean, the football match, there was meant to be 3
suicide bombers at that, yeah.
There, but there's only 2 accounted for. But if you take the Times, I haven't got the article in front of me, but it's all in the article. You take the Times, the 3rd bomb went off after the game had finished, long after the game had finished. So I don't know how that works. The first bomb, I mean, I'm assuming that the game started at 7:45, when most games do. Not that they usually have internationals, be they friendlies, on a Friday night, but I'm assuming it started at 7:45, which would make the first one trying to get into the match 10 minutes before the end. Do you know? Yeah. And he had a ticket, and apparently he tried to give this ticket over, and the security guard frisked him and turned him away. Well, you'd run like hell if you frisk someone who's got bombs strapped to their waists and whatnot. But apparently then the terrorist just backed off and blew himself up. And this is where this one football fan was supposedly killed. Well, I'm assuming that one football fan would be the security guard.
He was the one who was closest to him. Listen, Chris, I need to go to an ad break, so do you mind holding on for a couple of minutes? Now, folks, you're very welcome back. Chris, you still with me?
I'm still here.
That's brilliant. Listen, I'm going to move away from the French alleged terror attacks, even though we could spend the whole bloody day talking about that. There's that many anomalies and that many holes punched into it. But before I do, I just want to remind people to go back and look at some Charlie Hebdo videos, and you'll see, because Charlie Hebdo was so blatantly a false flag, they couldn't even get that video footage correct, and unfortunately for them, social media was flooded with it. I haven't seen that happen here now with this attack. They seem to have tightened their belts up a little bit, but nevertheless, there's a lot of questions to be asked in relation to what went on Friday night, compared to what the mainstream media are telling you.
Well, yeah, then it's like I say, just the 3 suicide bombers at a football match, 15 minutes before the end of the game. You know, the first one's trying to get in, blows himself up, blows one football fan up. Then we get the story that the second one blows himself up. Well, if he'd have waited 2 minutes, he could have the crowd would have been coming out. You know, he could have killed potentially hundreds. Mm-hmm. But for some reason he was premature and blew himself up. And then this third one, which was supposed to have happened, I think it was 5 to 11, which was way after the game had ended. They just cancelled it like it's never happened, you know?
Yeah.
They don't explain it away or anything like that. They're reporting on it. And then they have this other fellow who's walking past this stadium and he's on his phone. And don't forget these stadiums have massive car parks, you know? But this fellow's walking past and he's got his phone to his ear. And supposedly he's hit by debris from this suicide bomber, you know? Mm. Well, what sort of debris would they be apart from brains and blood? But, you know, he shows his phone. His phone's got a crack in his screen. And so if he hadn't been on the phone, he would have blown his head off, you know? Yeah, which, you know, is absolutely stupid because it's the glass that's broken on the screen. So what was he holding the phone to his ear the wrong way? But then he also got shot in the foot. Well, as far as I'm aware, there's been no reports about these suicide bombers doing any shooting. You know, at the football stadium. So how could he have got shot in the foot? Yeah, these, you know, this story's in all the main papers, and you know, what they doing reporting when it's so obviously not true.
Yeah, it's all a bit strange, Ollie. Another thing I find strange though is, and I'd like to get your opinion on it. Last year, and I'll just give you a little bit of the backstory. Last year in Dublin, the Israeli embassy here issued these pictures on, I think it was on that Twitter feed, from the Dublin embassy. And the pictures were, one was the Mona Lisa with a rocket launcher on her shoulder, and the caption was, Israel now, Paris next. The other one then was Dublin. We've got a character in Dublin called Molly Malone, and there's a statue of Molly Malone, and the statue had a hijab on it, you know, the all-in-one black outfit, and it was Israel next, Israel now, Dublin next, and then the other one was Denmark, Copenhagen. Now, Copenhagen had their terror attacks. Paris have obviously had theirs. Charlie Hebdo on now Friday night. So I'm just wondering, like, is Dublin going to get hit? But one of the things that strikes me most about ISIS, and you don't hear the mainstream media talking about this, is out in the Middle East, Israel are perceived to be causing the most grief for Muslim people, namely Palestinians. They're slaughtering them. There's no doubt about that. We can see that. We know that that's going on. And yet, since ISIS came about, not once have they ever mentioned nor threatened Israel. Now, I find that very strange.
No, well, it's like they don't hit any government buildings, do they? Or hit any politicians. Now, a politician is incredibly easy to get at if they wanted to, do you know? I mean, they don't all walk around with armed guards and whatnot. And same as government buildings. You know, you could have one detonate a bomb, a suicide bomb, or stand outside the gates of number 10 Downing Street and do it, do you know, which would cause
a lot of damage.
It caused sufficient damage, and you could understand it, but I mean, what is ISIS's what is their ultimate goal? Supposedly, we're told to make every country in the world a Muslim country. Well, now don't forget, 2 or 3 years ago, no one had ever heard of ISIS. It was all Al-Qaeda.
They just sprung up out of nowhere. And
they did, yeah. And the last time I read, there was about 300,000 members, you know, which is less than than we have in the reserve army, the territorial army, you know. Yet this 300,000 strong army can walk into any country in the Middle East that it likes. That take over all refineries. Now, you don't just you know, only Tom, Dick and Harry can run an oil refinery.
No,
you know, you need scientists.
Yeah.
But like, you know, we're told they take over these oil refineries, and then they're making millions of pounds a day selling this oil. Well, who's buying it?
Yeah.
You know, they take over dams. They control the electric, and what? Yeah, it's total tosh. Do you know, 300,000 doing all this, yet, and now they're sending them, they're branching off into Europe. Well, like 2 years ago, they wasn't even heard of. Yeah. You know, now you never hear of Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised they're not going around wearing Toyota T-shirts, you know, saying sponsored by Toyota, because they seem to have millions of these Toyota Jeeps. Like, where are they getting them from?
Oh, well, America, actually. That's already been revealed where they came from.
I mean, I don't know if you heard the clip I played just before I brought you in, the Irish journalist, and he was talking about the Mossad and the CIA and other intelligence agencies, Arabic intelligence agencies, being behind ISIS, funding them, running them.
Of course they are, and that's why Israel don't get bothered, and why no politicians get hit and whatnot. I mean, if you want to take over the world, you're not going to do it by alienating people.
So do you think there is a new world order, like headed up by elites? And the Rothschilds tend to come in for a lot of stick, but if you know about them, there's 100 other families you've never heard of.
Yeah, the real powers, the Breakspears and whatnot. Yeah, you don't hear about that. As we know, politicians, they're only they're puppets. Yeah. Used to be 100 years or so ago that they was blackmailed into doing the bidding of the huge corporations, but now they're picked from an early age. They're targeted from an early age. They all go to these posh schools where they're raped. And then become the rapists, and that still goes on. And anyone who doesn't think it does, you just need to read the papers, because that's even in the mainstream that this is still going on at these posh schools, and they're all psychopaths. And then they have no empathy. They're greedy, they're in it for what they can get. And look at Tony Blair, made millions and millions and millions, and they're just doing what they're told to do. They're not running the country anyway, they're puppets, really. And like I say, it's the hidden families who are calling the shots,
No, I wanted to, as I said a few minutes ago, I wanted to move away from the Paris stuff because you're obviously not finished blogging on that, and there's a lot more to find out about what went on over there. So we'll move away from that now and just let people have a good think about what went on over there at the weekend, and not believe everything you see in the mainstream media, because they are feeding you a lot of bullshit propaganda. Now, getting back to what you do, Chris, and your blogging, and I want to just give you my theory. Now, obviously, we can't mention. You were, in your opinion, your own opinion, falsely arrested and maliciously prosecuted in the UK recently. And we're not going to get into what the ins and outs of that war and what it was actually about. I can tell my listeners on another occasion what that is, so you don't put yourself into any stuck. But I have a theory. The reason they went after you for that, and we'll just say it was a false flag. We won't mention what it was, but it was a false flag, which means it didn't happen the way the mainstream media reported it. You've done a bit of blogging on it. They took you to court and persecuted you. I think the reason, and this is only my own opinion, that they went after you is because of the other stuff you've been blogging about, the politicians, the royal family, the paedophilic connections of all these people, the satanic abuse that they're engaged in. Do you think that might have had more to do with it than what you were actually blogging about?
I don't know. I mean, I came to the attention of the security services before I even started blogging, because I used to write for the Sovereign Independent Irish newspaper, you know it? I don't know. Do you know that one?
I do know the Sovereign Independent. Yeah, I remember it. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to write for them, and there was a strange takeover bid, apparently chaired, and the people in this sort of cartel who wanted to take over the Sovereign Independent were not the kind of people who would like what was written in the Sovereign Independent, So. And they were. It was an American consortium, and there was no doubt that the American intelligence services were behind it. So that was before I even started, doing my own blog. But they've been trying to shut me down for a long time, and it got to the stage. Last May, when no one could even get on my site, because we had something like 6 million DDoS attacks in as many days.
That's a denial of service for anyone that wants to know what that means.
Well, I'm not computer literate myself. I have a tech guy who does all that for me.
It's a denial of service. It means
what it means is like, everyone was trying to log onto the site at once, like 6 million people were trying to log onto the sites all at once.
Yeah, and basically get a 404 page.
And it's like 6 million people trying to get through a little doorway. and no one could get on. Now, according to my tech guy who really knows his stuff, there's only GCHQ
to have the ability to do something like that, yeah.
Who have that kind of clout, you know.
Have you ever noticed that about their building the GCHQ? It's very similar to the Google Chrome logo.
Sorry, say that again?
Do you know the GCHQ building in Cheltenham?
Yeah.
If you're looking at that from a bird's eye view, it's nearly identical to the Google Chrome logo.
I haven't. I know the building, but
have a look at the Google Chrome logo. It's stylised in a similar way.
I will. So anyway, we had to go onto our own server, and that's the only way that anyone could get onto our site, which it costs me £300 a month nearly to run this server. But that's the only way that I could keep going. So once we got that, they then decided they would arrest me, and they came at 1:30 in the morning without any arrest warrant or any search warrant, and sort of forced their way in, arrested me under Section 32 of PACE for suspicion of harassment, which is a summary offence. They then searched the place, even though I said they couldn't. It was very aggressive. So 1:30 in the morning, they don't arrest terrorists at 1:30 in the morning, And they stole my computers, and which was illegal anyway, because being a summary offence, Section 32 only allows for search and seizure if it's an indictable offence, which harassment isn't. And it sort of got dragged on. I sort of put a complaint in. Then they came back and without arrest warrant again, or search warrant, said they wanted to talk. I said, "You got any warrants?" They said, "No." So I to talk about it then. And so they battered the door down, smashed my bedroom window, smashed my back gate. And that was for supposedly indecent images. Well, I know full well that there weren't no indecent images on there. There was about 70 to 100. So all issued on my site. Now they've all been dropped, and they wouldn't tell the press why I'd been arrested. No one would know that I was arrested for indecent images if I had put it on the website. I've got nothing to hide, Mike, you know?
Well, I read the Daily Mail article about you online. Now, they weren't too kind about you.
Sorry?
The Daily Mail, they weren't very kind about what the articles they wrote about you.
No, but I'm not too kind to them either.
No, I mean, yeah.
There's no love lost there. The Express was actually the worst. Which once again was full of lies.
Yeah.
The whole lie. I was in every national paper going.
They're all the bloody same.
It was all lies. But I've seen the paper today, Mike. They're saying that the police, I can't remember which police force it is, are not going to investigate minor crime anymore because they haven't got the money. And there's been 3 or 4 police forces saying this now over the past month or so. Yet they're still arresting people and having them in court for supposed harassment. And harassment now constitutes anything that you sort of write on your own Facebook. I mean, there was one last week or the week before about a woman who made an awful comment that children with Down syndrome should be sort of like killed at birth. Terrible comment, Mike. A terrible thing to say, but it's not a crime.
No, we're supposed to have freedom of speech.
2 years ago, I wrote about a counsellor from Somerset called Colin Steptoe, and he said the exact same thing in all the national newspapers. They sort of picked up on this. And he said that, mentally handicapped children should be sort of like, put down at birth. Not a thing happened to him. He had to resign, but that was, because of the uproar that he caused. He wasn't prosecuted. Yet 2 years down the line, a woman who writes something similar on her own Facebook, now in theory she should only have her own friends on there, writes the same thing, and she's up in court. And ever since I was arrested, it seems like the floodgates have opened and everyone's fair game for getting picked up for harassment. Yet the police are saying that they're not investigating minor crime. So what does that mean? Does that mean harassment is a serious crime then? Do you know? Because
I think it's more to do with they're trying to stifle any dissent and people talking out against the system. That's exactly what's going on there. Well, listen, Chris, I need to go to my last 2 minutes of ad, so do you mind holding on for the last segment?
No problem.
Okay, folks, be back in 2 minutes with Chris.
Okay.
You're listening to
Liffey Sound, 96.4 FM.
On 96.4 Community Radio at its best. Liffey Sound FM.
Now, folks, you're very welcome back. Chris, you still with me?
I am, yeah.
That's brilliant. I've got about 10 minutes left, Chris. I just want to get your opinion. One blog that I read that I found very interesting, I just want to get a little bit more out from yourself about the blog that you wrote. And it was about someone who died in this country, Lord Mountbatten.
Yeah.
You wrote a very interesting blog. I mean, the official narrative here is that he was on holidays over in Sligo, out and about with some of his family, and boom, bomb goes off. The IRA take responsibility, and that goes down in the history books as that's exactly what happened. But your blog said something different happened.
Yeah. Well, as we know, Mountbatten was a paedophile. Now, even the mainstream media, and don't forget, Mountbatten was supposed to be one of our national heroes. Even the mainstream media are talking, mentioning threesomes with the Indian Prime Minister at the time, and Mountbatten and his wife, having this menage a trois. And there's no doubt Mountbatten was having boys from Kincora over in Ireland there, as was Edward Heath and whatnot. And it supposedly, it wasn't the IRA. Well, the IRA story actually is total tosh, because there's no way that they could have got the bomb on that boat.
Because it was a small little boat. It wasn't that big of a boat.
It was
either.
a small. When you look at it,
it was tiny.
For someone of his standing and supposedly money and whatnot, it was a right crap little thing, wasn't it?
A bit of a shack of a boat, but apparently the bomb was a couple of £100 in weight.
Yeah, there's no way that I can't remember now whether it's one bloke or two blokes supposedly planted it, and the evidence for the fella who went to prison for it was very, very dodgy. But do these people really go to prison, Mike? Do you know?
So why do you think he was taken out? I mean, if it wasn't, because like I said, our history books tells us like that because we had the struggles here and stuff and whatnot, and the fight with the IRA against the British and all that, and the Irish against the British and all that, the bullshit that went on over the 30 years, 40 years. So the official narrative is that the IRA got a chance to take out one of the British monarchy, and they took it. Yeah. But as your blog reads to me anyway, that it was his own people that got rid of him. And if it was them, why do you think they did get rid of him? Do you think he was a liability?
Well, no, not because of the paedophilia, because they're all paedophiles, aren't they? But that is to say that it's not that they love having sex with children. It's a power thing.
Yeah.
It's a lot darker than. In fact, I don't believe that the so-called elite, because they don't live anything like what we do, Mike.
No, they don't.
That you can't put them into boxes like homosexual and paedophiles and whatnot. It's sex, and they can have sex with a man.
Or if you're David Cameron, it's a pig.
In any way whatsoever. Do you know what I mean?
Well, if it's David Cameron, it's a pig.
Sorry?
If you're David Cameron, it's a pig.
Yeah, there you go. I'm sure he's had plenty of pigs as well. It's funny how who was the writer who wrote about it a couple of years before, where the Prime Minister had to have sex with a pig to free a member of the royal family who had been kidnapped. He had to have sex with a pig on national TV. I can't remember the name of the writer now.
I don't know.
That was awful coincidental, wasn't it? I see that the fellow who wrote that, Cameron said he couldn't be bothered to sue him. Well,
if someone wrote that about me and I knew it wasn't true, I would sue the ass off them. End of.
Of course you would, but
that's after I slapped him about it.
What's his name? Alexander something or other.
I can't remember his second name now. Yeah, it's Alexander something.
He
some lord or something like that.
After that, he became very ill.
That's right, yeah, he took ill.
Do you know?
He was supposed to have wrote that because he was promised some lordship or something like that, and he was snuffed at the last minute.
Job in the cabinet or something, wasn't it? And
it didn't happen.
Cameron supposedly
shafted him, basically.
And whatnot, you know. But these are just puppets. I mean, they have so much time on their hand, these politicians, that they can have, you know, a second job like Boris Johnson, editing magazine, whatever it was. You know, and that's how busy they're not busy at all. You try and see your politician and get him to do something. I mean, mine, James Nudridge, he's taking money on false pretences. He refuses to even acknowledge that I exist, let alone anything else. You know, not that I would vote for James Nudridge, but you know, they do nothing. They don't run the country. The country runs itself, more or less. You know, Belgium went something like months and months and months without any government. You know, and things actually picked up when they was out. You know, so they're just actors. They're just front men. That's all they are. Do you know? And I say they're all deeply warped.
Warped is an understatement.
If you're not, you don't get nowhere. Simple as that.
No, there was something similar happened over here because we've been watching, like, from this side of the pond, everything that goes on over in the UK, because we're subject to your newscast here as well. Whatever you see in the news over there, we get it here too, so we know exactly what's going on over there. So I've been fully aware of the paedophile scandals popping up and down within the British establishment and British celebrity. I think they're just hanging all the celebrities out to dry to keep the attention away themselves. But there was none of that going on here until last week. And a story broke here then that our police over here are allegedly investigating a former government minister for the same thing. And then later on the week, then we have someone who steps down from a political party. So, but it's all been kept out of the media. They're not really talking about it that much. And I've always said, if it's going on that scale in the UK, it's going on a similar scale in this country. It has to be.
It's going on in every country. It's going on in America. It's going on in Australia. And they all have their own Jimmy Saviles. New Zealand's just as bad. In fact, New Zealand's probably worse because of the small population. I'm sure if you took it pro rata, New Zealand would be right up there with the worst of the paedophiles, you know. Something funny about New Zealand, the royal family absolutely love it, don't they? And it gets a lot of mention for such a small country, you know. There's definitely something goes on there. Something goes on in Bristol as well. Bristol's definitely a dodgy place. And I've had people from Bristol write to me and they tell me that the death rate and you know, prostitution and drug addiction in Bristol is the highest. It's totally out of, you know, proportion for any big city in England. You know, definitely all roads lead to Bristol. You find a lot of our elites, Samantha Cameron and such like, they all went to Bristol University. You know, and as you know, Samantha Cameron, she was brought up by the Astors. And her step-granddad was William Astor, who was in court for the Profumo scandal, you know,
back in the 60s, yeah.
Mandy Rice Davis said of him when it was put to her that he denied giving her one, sort of thing. She said, well, he would say that, wouldn't he? And this is Samantha Cameron's step-granddad she was talking about, you know. Her stepfather, he had an affair with Cameron's, someone very close to Cameron. He's Steve something, his right-hand man with his wife, you know, and they all have affairs. And it doesn't seem to matter because they got no morals, Mike, you know. No morals at all. If someone can't sort of stay faithful to his partner or whatever, how can they be trusted in anything else?
Especially in a position of power. I mean, these people, as far as I'm concerned, they're all narcissistic psychopaths. And they are. They're just
what I say. You've only got to look at their eyes. You know, they're dead.
They are.
They're gone in the head, mate. They are psychopaths. And they're going to lead us into World War III, which obviously has a lot to do with this Paris malarkey, you know?
Yeah, well, it all ties in together, the whole lot. It's all part of the same global agenda. And on that, I want to just mention to you what's something that's taken place in this country. Last week, we had a budget here last month, and in the budget, they announced that they were going to do away with a €5 quarterly ATM charge that everybody has to pay when they're using their bank cards. And instead, they're going to introduce a 12-cent per transaction charge. And the following day then, they announced that they're going to try and roll out a cashless society system in Cork City, down in Cork, in Southern Ireland, that they're going to use Cork as a guinea pig to try out a cashless society. Now, I've been warning people for years, as I'm sure you have, that the dangers of a cashless society will mean that all your money will end up in digitised format, which will ultimately end up on a chip, which the banks would love nothing more than to have inside the human body. And as I pointed out, a lot of people are saying, well, so what's the harm? If there's no cash, you know, it's grand. Well, it means you can't do a bit of cash work on the side. You can't pay Joe the mechanic 50 quid for doing a mixer. But worst of all is, if you don't play ball with what the government want you to do, all they've got to do is turn your card off.
That's right.
And you're gone. You're finished. You cannot function.
Yeah, and they've been trying to do it for years and years. I mean, they did it under the guise of if you have your children chipped, you know, they won't be able to get snatched. If they get snatched by,
I think the whole Matty McCann story has something.
You know, then where they are. So it's promoted as a good thing, you know.
Yeah.
But like saying, Mark, you know, it's once we're all chipped, we well and truly are stuffed then, because you say anything that goes against the grain, and you're cast aside. You know, you got no food, no money, and then what do you do? You know.
Yeah.
All you can hope really is that people wake up.
And reject it.
From what I'm seeing on Facebook with all these red, white, and blue flags and whatnot, for something that is so obviously
a false flag.
At best nothing like we're told.
Yeah. It's frightening to think that everyone is just going along.
I mean, there's a story on Facebook by supposedly a young woman who was at the Bataclan Cup, and it's total nonsense. You know, she said, "Oh, played dead." Well, they all played dead in all these false flags. They all played dead. You know, you'd be that nervous. And I mean, I know women who get a paper cut and they want the doctor around. You know, we get these women. They're always heroes. Have you know? Because there's another agenda to empower women and make men seem weaker.
Well, that's what I mean. Look at Bruce Jenner. That's been going on for a long time.
It has, yeah.
It has. And they've been doing that for a while now. I've noticed that all right.
Yeah, we're getting to the stage where you know, so there's no difference between the sexes, if you like.
But Bruce, he won Woman of the Year there a couple of weeks ago.
Sorry,
Bruce Jenner. He won Woman of the Year.
Yeah, now I hear that you know it's all an act. And yeah, I mean we've got our own Kelly Maloney, you know the boxing promoter, and both him and Jenna, they look absolutely ridiculous. Well, he's winning Women a Year, but I hear that he hasn't had his bits off or nothing.
He still has his red and tackle.
You know, it's just furthering this agenda. You know that it's okay to be. You know, it's perfectly normal to be a transgender, no matter if you're 6'6" tall and built like a brick outhouse. You know, and look absolutely ridiculous.
But as you said, there is an agenda.
Kelly Maloney, do you know, and Kelly Maloney, when he was Frank Maloney, the boxing promoter, you know, he was a tough little guy.
Well, he's changed, has he? Frank Maloney.
Frank Maloney, yeah, he's called Kelly Maloney. He was in the...
right, I didn't know that. I know the guy you're talking about, yes.
Yeah, Frank Maloney, a little fella, a little bald fella, now he's got a full head of blonde hair.
Oh, that's a new one. No, I must look into that. But listen, Chris, unfortunately I've come to the end of the show. I've got 2 minutes left and I need to wrap up. So do you want to give out the name of your website, your web address for people to go and have a look at your blogs?
Yeah, it's www.chrisspivey.org, and that's Spivey is Spivey.
And there's a few videos. You have a few videos on YouTube as well if people want to go there and have a look as well.
There is, yeah.
All right.
That's a bit. I mainly concentrate on writing, videos, not my kind of thing, really. I hate to see myself and I hate to hear myself.
Right, but there are some good interviews that you've done, and if people want to have a look, they are on YouTube. Chris, listen, this has been a brilliant hour, and I've loved having you on, and I'd love to get you on again in the near future. We'll wait for a few more false flags, and we'll have a bit more to talk about then.
No problem,
All
Mike.
right, thanks very much. I'll talk to you again very soon.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that was Chris Spivey from the UK. Now, as I mentioned earlier on the show, he could not mention who he was blogging about over in the UK, but I can tell you who it was because I'm not under the same order that he was. It was the Lee Rigby case. So if you want to look into that, have a look into it anyway. And that was the beheading in Woolwich a couple of years ago. Apparently it didn't happen. But anyway, this has been The World You Don't Know, folks. And until next week, take care and be good yourself. And don't believe everything that you read in the mainstream media, particularly with the weekend that's in it, with all the crap that's going on over in France. Anyway, until next week, folks, take care and be good yourselves and one another. Talk to you very soon.
9 to 10 p.m. Monday night on Liffey Sounds. The world you don't know. The world you don't know. 9 to 10 p.m. Monday night on Liffey Sounds.